Hi, I have a question for you. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the words African hero? What's the first name that comes to your mind? I have a second question for you. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear African leader? Unfortunately, when you speak of African leadership, not too many positive words come up. And when you speak of African heroes, the list is not that long for most people. This is not a true reflection of African leadership or even African heroes. The truth is there are so many African heroes around us and so many amazing African leaders around us, but these stories are not told too often. Who Am I is a photography and storytelling series that is aimed at telling African stories that paint a true and complete picture of who we are as Africans in a bid to inspire young people to embrace who they are as Africans and to explore their full potential as Africans. This time, we are doing a Heroes edition and we are telling the story of 3 African heroes that inspire all of us. I hope that you will enjoy it. The first story I have is Mekatilili Wamenza, the warrior of the Giriama community. A long time ago, African communities lived in peace and harmony. Everyone had their place. The women were the center of the community, bathing and caring for their families. The men were the protectors, the ironclad of the community, protecting their families, protecting the community. The children were the flowers of the community, the custodians of hope for a better tomorrow. The community itself was guided, sustained, and blessed by Mulungu, the creator. And then the colonizer arrived. At first, they came as visitors, welcomed, cautiously welcomed, because they looked strange and no one had seen anyone looking like that, but welcomed nonetheless. They came speaking of a God different from Mulungu, and slowly the visitor became the oppressor. Suddenly, they decided that God was not Mulungu and that worshipping Mulungu was an offense to their God. And then they decided that our clothes were different from theirs and ours were inferior. And then they decided that our culture was different from theirs and that theirs was superior. And then they decided that their hands were softer than ours, that we could take more pain. The visitor had become the oppressor. Any defiance was met with violence. Defiance was met with lashes on backs. Defiance was met with burnt hearts. Defiance was met with punishments. Punishments meant to make people small, to make people feel inferior. The culture that they had once been proud of was shrinking, was dying, and they watched in pain, wondering, is there something that anybody can do? Mekatilili was an old woman at the age of 70 when she started her fight for freedom. She had lived her whole life watching her community being torn apart piece by piece. Her brother, Kithi, had been stolen from them when she was a young girl. And as an older woman, she had taught her children, she had taught her grandchildren to make themselves smaller, to hide, simply to survive the colonial rule. It wasn't right. She had no idea what to do. So she sought help from her ancestors. She walked into the Kaya forest, a forest that the Giriama community still believe, that is the final resting place of their ancestors and is riddled with mystical powers. She walked into the Kaya, taking one step at a time, each step feeling heavier than the last. The weight of watching their identity get lost. She found a huge tree and sat by its foot, reflecting, wondering, Will there ever come a time where their pride in who they are will be restored? Will there come a time where their children will be proud of the God that they worshipped, will be proud of the clothes that they wore, will no longer have to hide and be small to protect themselves from violence? And then she remembered she had once learned that whatever you seek will eventually seek you. She wanted freedom. She was going to seek for freedom. And with this, a comfort covered her. She felt her ancestors embrace her, walk with her. And although she had no idea how, she knew that she was going to do something. And so she walked out of the kaya, taking one step at a time, each step feeling lighter than the last, because this time she knew one thing: a solution would provide itself. No war can be won by one person. No fight is fought by a single person. Her solution was to create an army. How, you wonder? She decided to do it in her own unique way. You see, she was too old to fight. And women at that time were not warriors. And yet here she was, wanting to start an army. So what did she do? She found a space right at the center of her community, accompanied with drummers, and she decided she would perform a dirge. A dirge is a song and dance that is used in funerals to commemorate the loss of something. In her mind, this was commemorating the loss of the culture she had so embraced. And she danced, beating dust into the sky, telling people, are we going to mourn for the death of our culture? Or are we going to fight? Are we going to fight and bring it back to life? And she danced, and she sang, and she danced, and she sang, and caused havoc, telling people, young and old, that it was time to stand up, that even if they had lost, they would not lose without trying. She asked them to fight with a dance, with a song. And being an old woman, being a mother, they were shocked. They came to a standstill. They had to listen to her. The days that followed were full of reflection, in silent tones, in harsh tones, and in loud tones. People spoke among themselves. They agreed it was time to stand up for themselves. It was time to heed Mekatilili's cry for freedom. But how, they wondered, how they discussed. And in her leadership, Mekatilili had persuaded them to take an oath that they would fight in big ways and in small ways. That if someone's heart was burnt, they would all pitch in and help them to rebuild. That if someone was running away from the colonizer and needed to hide, they would help. That if someone had any rumors of anything that would put someone else in danger, they would speak out, they would protect them, they would protect each other. They had taken an oath to fight. And in taking this oath, they had heard rumors that there had been plans from the colonial government to take the young Giriama men into war on their behalf. And they said no, they were not going to take this lying down. But how? Again, you wonder, what could they have done? No one knew what to do, but Mekatilili had an idea what she could have done. She decided that she was going to do what a parent would do: stand up for their child against beasts she would never imagine she could defeat. So when one of the colonial administrators had set up a meeting ready to recruit the young Giriama boys to go for war, she took a chicken with its chicks from her farm and walked majestically into the meeting, looked him in the eye, and dared him to take one of the chicks from the chicken. Not knowing what exactly this meant, the colonial administrator walked confidently towards the chicks, lowered his hand, and tried to pick one of the chicks. And the moment he lowered his hand, the chicken fought like hell, pecking him, flying, causing havoc. He was embarrassed. He took a step back, and his anger was evident. Looking at each other, that stare meant something. His stare meant that trouble was coming. Her stare meant that she knew it and she was ready. His threat might not have been verbal, but it was implied. And in a few days, Mekatilili was abducted, shipped off to a jail 800 kilometers away from her home, to a land that she found strange. She did not understand the language that they were speaking. The people were African. Some words felt familiar, but she had no idea where this was. She would later find out that it was a place called Kisii. And the moment that she got there, she decided that she was not going to stay there. Having no idea exactly how she was going to go back home, her resilience, even though old and frail, was very apparent. And true to her nature, in a short time, she was able to escape. And she walked hundreds of kilometers through different cities of Kenya, hiding, surviving, hiding and surviving and hiding and surviving once more, until eventually 800 kilometers later, and God knows how many days later, she arrived back home. Her arrival was met with the information that the army that she had started was not threatened by her abduction. The people she had led to take the oath to resist, to fight for their rights, they had not been threatened by the losing of her freedom. They had kept fighting. And this filled her with hope, which is very important because this was not the only time that she was arrested. She had been arrested again and taken to a jail even further, to Kismayu, a different country. But she found her way back, walking again. She must have had very strong legs. It took 40 years before the country achieved freedom from the colonial government. But Mekatilili had successfully cemented her space in the list of heroes that had helped bring the country from a period of slavery, from a period of abuse, and from a period of cultural degradation and degradation of human life. She is not your typical hero. She was a woman. She was old. Not the first thing that you think about when you think of African heroes, but an African hero in her own right. And she is not the only one. There are many African heroes from the past. I hope that you have enjoyed this first story, and I cannot wait to share the second story with you. My second story is of someone that I find very unique. He is a hero in his own right, although his name might not be the first name that pops in your mind when you think of a hero. Have you ever seen these shoes on the road and wondered, why did people hang their shoes on electric lines randomly? Well, here's the story of why when you pass by Jonte's car wash, you see a line of shoes that are hung on the electric line. The call comes in at 3 a.m. in the morning, in the dark of the night. Ring, 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 ring. He wonders, who could be calling me at this time? He lets it ring the first time. Then it rings the second time, and he picks it up. What he hears on the other side is, please come, you have to help. Without even blinking, jumps into his car, drives all the way, taking the instructions of the person on the other side of the phone. He gets to Soweto in Kibera. There's a crowd of people. They are all surrounding this young man. Ua, 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 siku ya mwizi ni 40. So much chaos, so much noise. What could be going on? He walks into the crowd, squeezes his way through the crowd. He finds out that there is a young boy, a teenager, who is being beaten within an inch of death, right in the middle of the crowd. Mob justice. It's nothing new. It's also not the first time that he has been called to such a place or to such a situation. But he's never gotten used to it. This boy is dying. This boy is bleeding. At the corner of the crowd, there is a mother. She is crying. She has no voice. Jonte wonders, what do you do? Here is someone trapped by the life of crime, trapped by their actions, and the time has come when they can no longer run away. Riddled with fear, but led by a passion from his own experiences, he steps in front of the crowd. He ushers them to keep silent for a minute. Nobody responds. He shouts and asks them to be quiet. Takes some time, but eventually the crowd quiets down. And he speaks to them from the bottom of his heart. He asks this boy, is it true what you're being accused of? And in that moment, with his bloody self, twists and finds his way up and slowly nods to say yes, he is guilty of the crime. With that, Jonte looks up, addresses the crowd, asks them, he has just admitted what he has done wrong. Is that not a reason to show compassion? He is but just a young boy with his future ahead of him. He deserves a second chance. He does not deserve to die. And he keeps talking and talking and talking. Words that fill the crowd with some level of mercy. Words that fill this woman at the corner with some level of hope. Words that fill this boy with some level of faith. His pleas of mercy take some time before they land, but eventually they do. And he bends down and picks this boy by his hand. Quickly assisted by the boy's mother, there is a ray of hope. And he holds them with all the strength that he can muster and walks with them. The crowd disperses, making way for them to walk. Some willingly, some not so willingly, but they make way anyway. In this moment, he supports them with his strength, not only physical, but his emotional strength and his psychological strength. The boy is taken to hospital. He wakes up hours later after being treated for his wounds. Seated right next to his bed is Jonte, waiting for him to wake up. He musters all the strength that he can to ask him, who are you? And in that moment, Jonte decides to share who he is. You see, Jonte himself had been trapped in the life of crime as a teenager. He had found himself stealing from people, almost joining a gang, having friends who would also steal from people. It had started as a joke because his mother was not rich and they lacked basic necessities every once in a while. And he thought, well, if I could see something and pick it up, why not? Or if this person is being a little bit careless, why not take that? And slowly he had gotten trapped in this life. It had moved from need to ease. Well, it was easier to pick here than to work hard for it. And he found himself finding it harder and harder and harder to get out of the life of crime. But as they say, the days of a thief are always numbered. Have you ever heard of Blackie? or Bani, or stupid. These are all names given to cops. I'm not sure if they're true or fictional, but these are cops who take the law into their own hands. If they find you in the life of crime, rumor has it, they approach you and give you bus fare and tell you to leave the city, go, and never come back. Eventually, one of these cops caught up to Jonte, looked him in the eye, and told him that that should be the last time that he was ever spotted in his home, that he should leave and never come back. In fear, he ran and went back up country, stayed there for months. But you know, habit is second nature. He was used to the life of the city. He was used to the life of Kibera slum. Adapting to the slower life of upcountry was excruciating for him. He had to come back. He knew that he had to come back. So he sneaked back in. Except there was one problem. He could never sit. He was always looking over his shoulder. Is Stupid around? Is Bani around? Is Blackie around? Are his friends who felt betrayed by him running away, are they looking for him? What is going on? Am I safe? He could never sit in one place. And he thought, wait, this is no life to live. And then he realized he was not the only one living this life. He looked around him. His friends were living the exact same life, looking over their shoulder, afraid of what comes next, having no idea what the next minute holds for them. With nothing in his hands, he still decided that no, this is no way to live, that he will do something, having no idea exactly what that meant. Armed with nothing but a dream, a vision, and a hope for a better life, a life that is free of crime, Jonte started to speak freely of his desires to anyone who would listen. He spoke of his desire for a good job. He spoke of his desire for a business. He spoke of his desire to live a life free of crime. And he kept speaking and speaking and speaking. And eventually, someone listened. When he was asked, what do you need? What would make your dream come true? With no hesitation, he said, car wash. He wanted to start a car wash where he would wash cars and get an honest living. In this car wash, he would employ a group of his friends and help them earn an honest living as well. The person said, great, what do you need for a car wash? And slowly, he started the car wash business. The first day was hard. Jonte stood there for hours with one of his friends, waiting hour after hour after hour for even one person to stop and have their car cleaned. Their sign was posted at the side of the road, but they kept waiting and waiting and waiting. And when they were just about to give up, the first customer came to them. He stood there like a hawk watching its prey, hoping they don't touch anything, hoping they don't steal anything, looking at them, monitoring their every move. But he let them clean it nonetheless. And then the second customer came, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. And they kept counting and counting and counting. And this is how the car wash helped transform his life. There is a rumor that when a criminal dies, they take a pair of the shoes that they would wear in their life of crime and they toss it up an electrical cord. He decided that he would change the meaning of this for him. He decided that every young person who came to the car wash seeking an honest living would take a pair of their shoes and throw it on the electrical cord that cuts right across the car wash. And with that, it signified the death of their life in crime and the beginning of a new life, the beginning of a new, honest life. The gift of his struggle, the gift of the car wash, The gift of an honest living was breath. Finally, Jonte could breathe. He could live knowing that he does not have to look across his shoulder, that he does not have to wonder who is seeing him and who is not. And that gift was not only for him. He has managed to give that same gift to more than 24 young people from Kibera. So he looked at the boy in the hospital bed and reminded him, "So who am I? Did you ask? I am the person who stood in the gap as the universe gave you a second chance of life. You get to choose what you get to do with it." When you think of a hero, a lot of times you don't think of someone you know, you don't think of someone close to you. You think that a hero has to be someone so amazing. Well, the truth is, we all can be heroes. Each and every one of us has everything that we need to be heroes, to be good leaders. All you have to do is solve a problem that you feel strongly about that will make your life better and the lives of the people around you better. My third story is that of a fictional character, Wakesho, that I created together with a group of young people. Wakesho is visiting her grandmother, who has just told her the story of Mekatilili Wamenza and many other heroes who helped the country achieve freedom from the colonial rule. Wakesho has just shared the story of Jonte with her grandmother, and she's left wondering, wait, can I be a hero? And her grandmother gives her a cheeky smile and says, "Can you keep a secret?" Wakesho says yes. And her grandmother holds her by the hand and rushes into her hut where she sleeps. She digs through her chest and comes out with an old mirror. It's a magic mirror, she tells Wakesho. "This mirror, my child, is a window into yourself, a window into the future. If you are honest, then it gives you a glimpse of what the future holds for you. Look at it and tell it your honest heart's desires." Wakesho is confused, but she places herself in front of the mirror and says, "You know, I would like to be important. I would like to do something that will make people like me. I want to be a hero. I want to be a hero to someone. Dear mirror, show me what lays ahead of me." And just like that, an image appears in the mirror. It is not a reflection of her at the moment, but it is an image of her. She looks sad and blue. That feeling is familiar, and it takes her back to a funeral that she had attended a few months ago. That funeral was of her cousin Gloria, who had died of a drug overdose. She remembers the guilt that she felt, the sadness that she felt in losing a friend, a best friend. That is what the image reminded her of. And she says it loudly. And the moment she does, a second image appears on the mirror. This second image, she has no idea what it means. And she keeps looking. She wants to turn to her Gogo and ask her, what does this mean? But Gogo quickly tells her, don't you dare look away from the mirror. The meaning will come to you. So Wakesho keeps staring. And slowly, she starts to understand it. There are highlights on the ears, on the eyes, and on the mouth. She remembers that Gloria was not the only person she knew who was in pain. She remembers that Gloria is not the only person she knew who was a victim of drug abuse. She wondered, is it possible to pay more attention, to see them more? Is it possible to listen to them a little bit more? Is it possible to speak to them or speak for them and ask for help? That's what the image gives her. She doesn't understand exactly what it means, but the moment she says it out loud, a third image appears. This image excites her, fills her with warmth. It reminds her of something in herself. You see, Wakesho is drawn to people. Wakesho is artsy. Wakesho is wild. Wakesho is fun. fun, and she has many friends, and people enjoy her company. In looking at this image, she admires herself. She admires the person that she sees. And slowly she starts to realize, because of who she is, she could see people more because they're around her. She could listen to people more because they're willing to talk to her. And she could speak out, speak to people, and speak about people, and speak for people. And people would listen because she is vibrant and she is wild. And as she smiles, the fourth image comes up. This next image filled her with anxiety. She had so many questions. Sure, she could try and see people a little bit more. Sure, she could try and listen to people a bit more. But wait, did she have what it takes? Wait, did they see her the same way that she saw herself? Would this be possible? Would they accept her? Would they laugh at her? So many questions. They left her feeling afraid, not knowing, do I try? Do I not? She kept staring at this image, and the more she stared, the more her anxiety grew. You could feel it in the discomfort of the room. And in just that moment, the next image comes up. At first, she did not understand this image. It was a trust fall. What could it mean, she thought. But Gogo had said, don't look away from the mirror. So she kept staring and wondering, what could it mean? And slowly, she started to understand it. But she did not like the meaning. You see, this is not the first time Waukesha had seen a trust fall. She had seen people being dared to do it at school. She had seen people play it on the playground. You stand ahead of someone and fall backwards and hope that they will catch you. It required a level of faith that she found almost impossible to have. But in looking at this image, she started to understand that although fear was easier, the rewards of faith far outweighed the benefit of fear. And she looked around her and realized that she had people she could trust, that she had people that could support her. And with that, the next image appeared. This last image filled her with pride. It filled her with joy. She could see the person she's becoming. She could see the hero that she was becoming. And it was so clear. Gogo was right. This magic mirror was a glimpse into herself, and as a result, a glimpse into the future. Gogo's words echoed in her ear that everyone has exactly everything that they need to become the heroes that they want to be. The story of Mekatilili is inspiring. It shows us that despite what other people might think are weaknesses, people have the power to rise above any challenge and become heroes. The story of Jonte is inspiring. It shows us that in spite of having nothing, something amazing can be created from nothing. And the story of Waukesha reminds us that the future is a blank page, and that if you look into this mirror, if you look into who you are, you will find exactly what you need to become your own hero. I hope that you have enjoyed our showcase. I worked on this with a group of young people from Wale Wale, Kenya, and we shall have a few episodes coming up in the future where you will get to see how they are learning the art of storytelling through photography. And we also have a book that have more detailed versions of this story. So I hope that this is not the last that you hear from us or that we hear from you. Feel free to engage with us and follow us. Thank you for watching our exhibition.